Welcome to this Danny Kukler special here on the Danny Kukler podcast and Danny Kukler YouTube channel. I have here Mark from Spectrum Pulse.
How's it going, folks?
Yes, Mark talks about all the innatives of the Hot 100 on Billboard Breakdown, and he does his YouTube channel Spectrum Pulse, where he has all these great album reviews.
Well, not just album reviews anymore. I've got a couple of longer form video essays types that I've been working on for the course of several months. I think I put out 4 or 5 of them this year. So yeah, I'm really happy with those.
Yeah, the Bro Country one turned out very good. I watched that recently, and it turned out really well.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. That took me about 4 months of work, so I would hope it turned out well, and it's actually getting received pretty well too, which I'm very happy to see.
Yeah. So we're gonna delve into all the year-end topics, of the Hot 100, and go into rock a little bit, and then go through the Grammy nominations, go through some records that were important to the year that was 2023. What would you sum up 2023 as in music?
It really depends. I feel like it's one of those years where if you were just listening to the mainstream charts, you had a bad year. If you were anywhere outside of that in terms of listening to what's in the underground or what's not getting chart position, I think you probably had a really good year. It's one of those years where a lot of what was in the mainstream didn't exactly overlap with what would be better in the underground, and there wasn't as much crossover as they probably should be.
Yeah. I felt that way too, because there was like a lot of things that should be on the charts that aren't and stuff like that. So it really depended on what kind of year you wanted to have. So
that's a good way of framing it. I actually agree with you, because again, this is the sort of year that if you were willing to put in any sort of work, you would be able to find stuff, and pretty easily too at that.
Yeah. So with the year coming to a close, country music has had its dominance with the year-end countdown, especially the year-end number one having Last Night by Morgan Wallen claiming the top spot. How do you feel this represents the public's listening over the 2023?
I have layered thoughts on this, and I don't want to spoil too much because I'm working on my own personal year-end list where I will get into some of this. But to give a high level, I feel like it was a mixed blessing. Because on the one hand, I've been saying for a long time that country is more representative of what a lot of people listen to than they would otherwise expect. So in a year where hip hop had a major downturn, especially in the mainstream, and mainstream pop wasn't great, mainstream R&B just wasn't visible. I'd say mainstream rock kind of suffered for the same thing. Reggaeton also kind of took a bit of a backseat outside of a couple of artists. Country kind of had a lot of room just to occupy a lot of space. And for me, as a fan of country music, I'm okay with that. But at the same time, it was a very mixed blessing. It's kind of a be careful what you wish for sort of thing, especially when it comes to, hey, you want country? Well, the biggest song of the year is coming from Morgan Wallen from his 36 song.
Yeah.
So, like, you're going to get Zach Bryan going to number 1 with Casey Musgraves, which is so insane to actually mention in 2023 if you know the history of either of those acts. But on the flip side, you're also going to get Jason Aldean getting his first number 1, arguably a decade after his peak. It's a weird year.
Yeah, I saw Pat Finnerty's "When Make the Song Think" on that song, and that was glorious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so on the Jason Aldean song, that Jason Aldean song does stink.
It does, but the thing is, it stinks for the same reason that Jason Aldean has always been not very good at his best and truly abysmal at his worst. None of this was surprising, and I think the big failure of mainstream press and the fact that they have ignored country for so long is part of the reason why that song got as big as it did. And we can get into that later.
Yeah, so were there any interesting storylines to follow in the sterile 2023 pop music landscape?
I'd say yes. Of course, Taylor Swift's ubiquity is a storyline. I think it's kind of hard to ignore, and a lot of people will say it is the storyline. But for me, I got to be honest, a lot of that was tied into Midnight's just having the tail end of its chart follow through, and they didn't even pick great singles from Midnight's. I have to be honest there.
No,
And then from there, it was Speak Now and the 1989 re-releases. The Speak Now re-release was really good, but that's because Speak Now is a great album. 1989 re-release, you can tell where the corners were being cut, and that did bug me a lot, but it is what it is. They did insane numbers. I would argue they are the story. What I think is the other larger story is how if you were not pushing or if you were not active in pop was not really moving much of anything. Doja Cat had her moment, but it came with a lot of label infighting with RCA and Kemosabe. I would argue SZA had more of a pop R&B moment, and I think that's going to be overshadowed, even though, it's coming in from the tail end of 2022. I'd also say that there was a lot of pop acts that kind of existed on inertia. Like, we got Shakira having hits again for the first time in years, but let's be honest, she wasn't really pushing them. They were kind of just there based off of existing chart clout and personality that she has. Miley Cyrus was a huge example of this. Flowers was a big song this year for some reason, and you can't say that Miley was actively pushing that album because she wasn't. Like, Endless Summer Vacation came and went like that. Most people are not remembering that project this year, and yet it kind of made waves.
Right. So, more on to that Taylor Swift dominance topic that we talked about earlier. How do you feel that the dominance of artists such as Taylor Swift and Beyonce have impacted the top of the charts and impacted the music industry as a whole?
Beyonce, I think less so. Beyonce doesn't play the chart games because she doesn't feel like she has to. She knows her fame and ubiquity is going to go outside of that. And she's right. The Renaissance tour did insanely well for her. And it's going to lead to her songs charting pretty much regardless, although probably not doing as well as they could if she played the game. The flip side of this is that Taylor Swift does play the game. She has an entire industry and mechanism set up to do well for her. Got to give kudos to whoever at Republic actually signed off on that to help make her albums feel as monumental and dominating as they are. Am I a fan of it? Mixed opinions, but I think that a lot more artists could be playing in that lane if they wanted to.
What are some albums and songs you looked at as being so good or being so bad that it's good?
That's tough. Again, like, I think there's a lot of individual songs that feel like they came and went as well. There's some, I don't want to spoil too much, as again, I'm working on year-end list for myself. The So Bad It's Good stuff, I always think is a little bit of a crapshoot, because again, if a song is so bad that you start thinking that's good, starts being funny, I can't hate it to the same degree, especially this year, where I feel like a lot of the songs that were truly bad, they stopped even being fun. Like, the one song that immediately springs to mind is Slut Me Out by NLE Choppa, which is so unbelievably ridiculous that all I can do is laugh at it. It's not the sort of song that makes me angry. I thought it would, but as the year went on, I'm like, this guy is a walking joke. I can make fun of this, but I can't hate it to the same degree. Compare this to someone like Drake, who, quite frankly, oversaturated more of this year than he needed to. And at this point, it's stopped being funny. At this point, it's just obnoxious and kind of gross and pathetic.
So here's some tracks I looked at or liked from the pop scene. SZA, Kill Bill.
Fine. Not the best song on the album. I think the issue I have with SOS is that a lot of the best songs were not pushed as aggressively as they could have been. Like, I also put Snooze in that category. I'm like, it's fine. I don't love it. I don't hate it. It exists very well. I think if we're going for SZA songs I like a lot more, it's like Nobody Gets Me or Low, and those songs that have a little bit more swing to them or a little bit more, feel a little bit more detailed. I think those are what I gravitate to. Kill Bill it has a great music video, but it doesn't do a ton for me.
Right. Flowers by Miley Cyrus.
I get what it was doing. I understand what it was trying to do. It's the sort of song that I never felt stuck enough for me. I think the sample is a little overused. I think the production on that song is really muddy. I don't think it allows anything to really pop or sparkle. it's the sort of track where I understand its relevance for Miley and where she's at this stage of her life. I wish it was more interesting.
Metro Boomin, Creepin'.
Call it what it is. It's a cover. Like, this is not a song that otherwise needs to be, it's not a song that needs to be considered a track in and of itself. It's The Weeknd covering and then 21 Savage adding a guest verse to the original I Don't Want to Know. Now, granted, I actually like I Don't Want to Know seemingly more than most, so I thought the song was fine, but also, like, again, you can't, there is a stigma against making covers, especially in rap and R&B in the modern era. I think it's a bit of a shame because, like, it's just call it what it is.
Speaking of covers, Luke Combs, Fast Car.
It's a great cover, in my opinion. It is almost a little too faithful to the original. It's the sort of track where diehard fans of Tracy Chapman are never going to fully embrace it because it is Luke Combs. I think Luke Combs doesn't have the same degree of subtlety to it, which made the original Fast Car so special. But when the original song is a classic and the cover is really, really damn good, it's hard to dampen a classic in the same way that, let's say, the EDM remix with that song with Jonas Blue did back in like 2016, 2017, which was just, honestly, I liked it more than I probably should, but that's, again, rock solid fundamentals.
Sam Smith and featuring Kim Petras, Unholy.
My issue, I talked about this song last year in my worst hit songs of 2022. It stuck around this year. In my opinion, it's a mess. It's a disaster. I think a lot of the more aggressive techno remixes of the songs are much better because it improves the groove. The entire issue with the song is that the groove isn't there. Sam Smith, they can't sell it. Kim Petras, I have never been a fan of hers for years now. I find a lot of her pop to be very, very ephemeral. It doesn't have the punch that it should, especially given how explicit it is. Kim Petras also has been releasing projects fairly regularly. I don't think a lot of them hold up all that well, especially with all her support of Dr. Luke, which is kind of sleazy. And the one thing I will say is that in a year where Chappell Roan came out with her album that was often just as explicit as Kim Petras, and she has a much better voice, better production. I'm like, we don't need to do the Kim Petras thing anymore. I'll just say it. Also, Slater was around too. Again, I wish there's a lot of great pop acts that were just off in the wings and who could have used that mainstream push because pop would have been way better this year if they had it.
Zach Bryan, Something in the Orange, and I Remember Everything.
Two different songs for two different reasons. I want to say Something in the Orange was one of my favorite songs of last year, but it almost feels a little obvious for Zach Bryan. It was the sort of song I think that got a little overplayed in its context. I Remember Everything.
Yeah.
Like isolating it from the crowning achievement of the song that it is in terms of these two acts getting to number one. I think it's a very powerful song. I think it does what it needs to do. I think it's not my favorite song from either act. I think it's going to be a little slow and it's a little slapdash in moments, which I'm not sure always work. But overall, it's a great song. It's going to make my list for this year.
Yeah, I Remember Everything's pretty good. Ice Spice was featuring Pink Panthers, Boys a Liar Part 2.
Fun, again, it's the sort of song that was used primarily to break Ice Spice more than Pink Pantheress. That bugs me. Pink Pantheress is actually, she put out an album this year. I think it's really good. It's getting better critical reception than I think a lot of people expected, but it's a really good pop album. I wish more from that project had been pushed beyond just Boys a Liar. We can have the Ice Spice conversation now. I think Ice Spice is very limited as an artist. I see what she does that works, but the issue I have with Ice Spice is more that it feels like she kind of locks into her lane and doesn't really vary that much. I would be interested to see her develop her sound a little bit more rather than feel like kind of a one-trick pony who happens to be hot.
Lil Durk featuring J. Cole. Not Lil Durk versus J. Cole. All My Life.
The thing with All My Life is that, like, it feels like a song that comes from a different era. It feels like something that would have dropped in the 2000s, playing to the formula of the big pop chorus of the guest choir of kids, where it's that was the crossover method that existed in like 2002. Nas did something like this, I want to say in 2002 or 2003, one or the other, with, I think it's I Can. The issue I have with songs like this is that they feel very obvious, and a lot of people say J. Cole steals the song. I kind of disagree. I don't think it's one of his best verses. I actually think Lil Durk does a really good job with his verse in terms of feeling aspirational for the kids, whereas J. Cole just kind of gets in his own way. Again, I have a little bit of an aversion to large kids choirs. I don't think they work very well. But at the flip side of all this is that it's also produced by Dr. Luke. So you can kind of tell where that formula is coming from, and it just starts feeling cynical to me, because this year was the year they were trying really hard for the mainstream pop breakthrough of Lil Durk, and it didn't really work.
Lil Uzi Vert, Just Wanna Rock.
I get the appeal of it more now. Again, you hear that go off in the club, it works. I wish there was more to it. I feel like the song is not nearly as special as so many people were hyping it up to be, mostly because I think Lil Uzi Vert is in the weird situation where they're kind of overexposed. Like, I listened to Pink Tape this year. It's fine. It's a total mess, but Lil Uzi Vert is playing to the rock star persona that they try to amplify to top tier. And a lot of it's shallow hedonism. Fine. I don't mind that, but I wish they were more consistent at it. And that is the big issue that I encountered, is I just don't think I don't think they're very consistent.
Olivia Rodrigo, Vampire, into the whole Olivia Rodrigo universe.
Okay, so the one pop star who, in my opinion, should have had a much better year was Olivia Rodrigo, and it kind of drives me nuts that I feel like Guts was probably marketed poorly. I would not have used Vampire as a leadoff single. It feels very, I'll say, safe, going for the piano ballad that has all the very theatricality to it. It's not. It's a lane that makes sense for Olivia Rodrigo, but it's also not her at her best, especially when you have Bad Idea right as the next single, which is so much better.
Right.
And like the thing is like she doubled down on the pop rock. The pop rock on the album is better. I will say Guts is a better album than Sour, in my opinion. It doesn't have any high points as strong as Good For You, but that song goes so hard. And overall, it's hard for me to get angry at Olivia Rodrigo when she was one of the few bright spots in pop, and it seems like a lot of it's just been kind of mismanaged.
So we're now going to talk about the Recording Academy, your favorite topic.
Boy.
And the Grammy nominations, which February 4th, 2024, they're going to be handing out a bunch of awards that mean like shit. So, Record of the Year, we have Worship by Jon Batiste, Not Strong Enough by Boy Genius, Flowers by Miley Cyrus, What Was I Made For by Billie Eilish, On My Mama by Victoria Monet, Vampire by the aforementioned Olivia Rodrigo, Anti-Hero by Taylor Swift, and then Kill Bill by SZA.
I like Anti-Hero the most of all the songs there, but I also get why giving all the additional awards to Taylor feels like a little bit of overkill. I really like the Billie Eilish song from the Barbie movie. I think it really works in the context of the movie. But I also saw Billie Eilish live this year, and she did that song, and it really connected powerfully. I'd be happy if she got it as well. Who else got nominated? Oh, Boy Genius with Not Strong Enough. This was supposed to be Boy Genius's year, and I feel like it was a crime that their label did not push them properly to the mainstream, because Boy Genius are set up to be huge. And outside of the charts, they very much are. Like, they have the critical backing. They've got the popular backing. There's a lot to Boy Genius as an act that should make them the biggest thing around. And yet, not really getting there. Not really crossing over in the same way. And that bugs me.
We have Album of the Year. We have World Music Radio by Jon Batiste, The Record by Boy Genius, Endless Summer Vacation by Miley Cyrus, Did You Know That There's a Tunnel Under Ocean Boulevard by Lana Del Rey, The Age of Pleasure by Janelle Monáe, Guts by Olivia Rodrigo, Midnights by Taylor Swift, and SOS by SZA.
This one's tough because, again, I really like Midnight's. I think Midnight's is a real shot to win it, especially given the greater maturity behind it. On the flip side, Age of Pleasure by Janelle Monáe is, in my opinion, criminally overlooked. In my opinion, that album is great. It's not top tier with Janelle Monáe stuff, but her standard is just so obscenely high. I also know that she's not going to win because Age of Pleasure kind of didn't connect in the way it should have, given that it felt very accessible. The Lana Del Rey album is interesting. I think it's probably close to her best. It's the album I think is probably her most songwriter styled. I think that her writing is probably at its best. You get the biggest and most revealing snapshots of Lana on that album, which I think is a good thing. Someone needs to tell me who Jean-Baptiste is paying off that he keeps getting all these nominations. Because again, it's fine, but it's not exactly great music. Let me rephrase that. I think the music itself is good, but at the same time, it's very safe. It doesn't move the needle for me.
All right. Song of the Year. A&W by Lana Del Rey. Anti-Hero by Taylor Swift. Jean-Baptiste with Butterfly. Dance the Night by Dua Lipa. Flowers by Miley Cyrus. Kill Bill by SZA. Vampire by Olivia Rodrigo. And What Was I Made For by Billie Eilish.
In a just world, this would come down between A&W and What Was I Made For. I think A&W is probably the one that deserves it the most because of how that song is constructed, what is required to go through it. It's an insanely dark song. I'm honestly kind of shocked that was the pick that Lana's team did for the Grammy push. Anti-Hero was nominated for that one as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So Anti-Hero's got a shot. Kill Bill has a shot. What Was I Made For has a shot. Dance the Night does not. Dance the Night feels so disposable to me. It feels like the sort of pop song that is pretty but doesn't do a lot outside of that. So it'll be interesting to see how the split happens, if there is one, between song and record of the year, because that to me is always very revealing of where the Academy's mind is, or if they're going to try to be, we'll give it to one and then compensate by giving something to the other. We'll see where that goes.
Best New Artist. We have Gracie Abrams, Fred Again, yeah. Ice Spice, Jelly Roll, Coco Jones, Noah Kahan, Victoria Monet, and The War and Treaty.
All right, let's go through these one by one because I have thoughts on all of them. So, first one is Gracie Abrams. You said, right?
Yep.
I got first exposed to her actually this week. She crossed over with a song with Noah Kahan. We'll get to him later. She's the daughter of J.J. Abrams.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And her first album was on Interscope and was produced by Aaron Dessner. So, like, you can frame the whole nepotism thing. I see the appeal of her. I find her utterly inoffensive. Like, it's great wallpaper music. But at the same time, like, to get the backing she does so early, you know where that's coming from.
Fred Again.
Fred Again is huge. I actually saw Fred Again live this year. As a producer, he's impressive. I get the appeal. I don't always like how he mixes his percussion, but he's deserving of the nomination, in my opinion. I think there's a level of theatricality. There is a wistful side to his production that can be very Jamie XX inspired. And I'll say this, Fred Again's production on the Rami album, Rami of the XX, was phenomenal. Was probably not played up enough in Rami's album rollout, but it's one of the best electronic albums of the year, handily.
Ice Spice.
I've said my piece on Ice Spice. She's getting the nomination because she's extremely popular. I don't think she wins. I think it's very much the flagrant of the issue that she is so limited as an artist.
Jelly Roll.
Jelly Roll is a better story than an artist. I got to be honest. Like, I like Son of a Sinner. I think their Jelly Roll has a lot of good moments, but at the same time, I also do not find a lot of his stuff super compelling. If you're in that space of country rock or that's drawing, like, he originally came from hip hop, and then he had a couple really rough years and kind of has rebranded himself as this is his comeback story. It's a great story. The music's kind of so-so for me.
Coco Jones.
Good in R&B. I'm not surprised she's getting the nomination because like she's got credits behind the scenes. She's well connected in the industry. This to me is the place of the her nomination that you normally see across a lot of the R&B categories. I think Coco Jones is good. I wish ICU did better. Actually, I wish ICU was just better produced. Overall, no qualms that she's here. She deserves to be.
Noah Kahan.
I have so many issues with Noah Kahan because on the one hand, Stick Season is not very good as an album. Like, he is the second coming of Mumford and Sons. We can all recognize this. And the thing that I see with Noah Kahan that drives me a little off the wall is that while I was so frustrated with Stick Season, it was also the sort of album is like, okay, I don't like this guy, but his hooks are good enough. He's accessible enough. This guy is going to be huge. I said that in 2022. He has been huge this year. And then he started collaborating with a bunch of artists I like and making a bunch of songs I thought were only so-so on his album turned out to be really good. Like he worked with Casey Musgraves, he worked with Hozier, he's toured with Rustin Kelly, he does a song with Post Malone that I really, really like. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, God damn it. Like he's going to find a way to make me like him in some capacity. And I mean, props to him. He's probably, again, he's deserving of the award, but him on his own just presses a bad nerve.
Victoria Monet.
Again, deservingly so. I don't love Jaguar 2 the same way that a lot of people do this year. I think that it's a pretty good R&B album, but I'm not super over the moon on it. A lot of people have made a lot of weird comparisons with that project that I don't think entirely makes sense. Again, I don't get the entire appeal, but I get why she's here.
Then we have the War and Treaty.
War and Treaty are deserving of this award. They won't get it, but as a country soul gospel duo, they're a husband and wife pair, predominantly in indie country. And I think their album this year is actually really good. Doesn't stand out a ton to me. I don't think it's stellar. I didn't review it, but at the same time, like, I can't complain about it. It's overall, they have such powerful presence. They have really good interplay. They're a great story, but the music's much better to back it up.
Producer of the year: Jack Antonoff, Ernest Emile, Hit Boy, Metro Boomin, and Dan Nigro.
This probably should go to Jack Antonoff. I got to be honest. Like a lot of people do not like Jack Antonoff because they think he was the one who ruined chunks of 1989. Whereas the producer who actually did a lot of the bad pop mixes was not Jack at all, and he was actually the one who actually improved a lot of his old mixes on 1989 because he produced a big chunk of that album. He should probably get it, if only because of his work with Midnights and with Lana Del Rey. I think there was a lot of good common ground there. Like, I'm overall happy with that. Actually, hang on, I might be wrong. Did he produce that with Lana Del Rey?
Yeah, he did.
Oh, he did? All right, good.
Yeah. Did you know that there's a tunnel under the Ocean Boulevard? Yep.
Okay.
And then Songwriter of the Year: Edgar Barea, Jesse Joe Dillon, Shane McAnally, Deron Thomas, and Justin Tranter.
I got to be honest. I would have to go through the liner notes to be able to speak more directly to that nomination. I'm familiar with all the names. I would just have to see like what they put out this year.
Yeah. Rock and metal. We'll go to the Rock Awards.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah.
Let's do the Rock Awards. Let's do it.
Best rock performance: Sculptures of Anything Goes by Arctic Monkeys, More Than a Love Song by Black Pumas, Not Strong Enough by Boy Genius, Rescued by Foo Fighters, and Lux Eterna by Metallica.
This should go to Foo Fighters. I think Rescued is the best song there. I know a lot of people really like Not Strong Enough. I'm not one. I think it sounds good, but not great. Rescued, for what it meant and for what it was doing, while also being a great song on an album from the Foo Fighters that's frankly better than it has any right to be. It's probably the Foo's best album in over a decade.
Yeah, since Wasting Light.
at least since Wasting Light. And with that, I think there's a power and catharsis that comes with that song that really connects. If we're giving it to a rock song, it should be that.
Best metal performance. Oh boy. We have Bad Man by Disturbed, Phantom of the Opera by Ghost, 72 Seasons by Metallica, Hive Mind by Slipknot, and Jaded by Spiritbox.
I'd love to say it goes to Spiritbox. It won't. I didn't love the production on that Ghost song. I will say that it's probably going to go to Metallica. It shouldn't. I don't think that album is like, let's be very real. I know I'm not as connected to the rock circles as you probably are. Are folks still talking about that Metallica album?
No, no, they aren't. They aren't.
But that's my point. Like, it's the sort of thing that will go for legacy.
Which is too far gone. Yeah. So we have Best Rock Song, Angry by the Rolling Stones, Ballad of a Homeschool Girl by Olivia Rodrigo, Emotion Sickness by Queens of the Stone Age, Not Strong Enough by Boy Genius, and Rescued by Foo Fighters.
Again, it should go to Rescued. It won't. Well, Rescued is going to get one award. I hope to God it's at least one. What was the there was a song there, the Rolling Stones song.
Angry.
I did not hear that Rolling Stones album this year because I have no interest in hearing a Rolling Stones album in 2023. Did you hear it? Was it good?
I heard a couple of the songs. It was okay. It was nothing to write your home about.
But then that to me is going to tells me that congratulations, Rolling Stones are going to win a Grammy in 2023 because again, they probably got that song is positioned in a way I'm like, okay, I know why it's here. Like the Grammys like rewarding legacy and their friends, and that will not surprise me if this wins.
And then we have Best Rock Album. But here we are, Foo Fighters, Starcatcher by Greta Van Fleet, 72 Seasons by Metallica, and then we have This Is Why by Paramore, and In Times New Roman by Queens of the Stone Age.
Okay, so this should go to the Foo Fighters. In my opinion, it should go to the Foo Fighters. I don't care for the Queens of the Stone Age album. It's fine, whatever. It did not click for me the way I was hoping or expecting. It did. Like at this era, I'm kind of checked out with that band. It should not go to Metallica. That album is bloated and poorly produced again. Who else was nominated? I believe it
was This Is Why by Paramore and Starcatcher by Greta Van Fleet.
Greta Van Fleet's getting the industry push. I don't think that I heard parts of that album, but I've also kind of checked out on the Greta Van Fleet hate mob. Like it doesn't do anything for me anymore. Like, okay, Greta Van Fleet put out an album. I've stopped caring. The Paramore album is interesting. I'm not surprised it got nominated. What does surprise me is that it's maintained it's connected the way for a lot of people. I think it's a pretty by the numbers post-punk album. Like it's post-punk. We've heard this before. Like, and to me, it doesn't feel super special, especially if you're familiar with that brand of post-punk. If you like Paramore and you think this is Paramore doing something that's super special, I mean, I can't argue with you. It is different for them, but it didn't click as deeply as I would like. Granted, I've never been a huge Paramore fan, so I think some of that all has to be taken with a grain of salt. So take it or leave it.
And then we have Best Alternative Music Performance. We have Belinda Says by Always, Body Paint by Arctic Monkeys, Cool About It by Boy Genius, A&W by Lana Del Rey, and This Is Why by Paramore.
Lana should win this. I don't know why Arctic Monkeys keep getting nominated. That album was not very good. Like, I know it's inside the nomination window. I know Arctic Monkeys have that level of legacy, but at the same time, it's not good. What was the second one you mentioned? Just quickly.
Belinda Says by Always.
By Always. That would be cool to see win. I like Always. I wasn't super huge on Blue Rev, but at the same time, like if they're getting that sort of recognition, that's cool. I'd love to see that. You know what? I want to see them win. That would be cool. Just because for Canadian indie rock.
God bless Canadian indie rock. And then we have Best Alternative Music Album. We have The Car by the Arctic Monkeys, Record by Boy Genius. Did you know that there's a tunnel under Ocean Boulevard by Lana Del Rey, Cracker Island by Gorillaz, and I Inside the Old Year Dying by PJ Harvey?
I'm shocked PJ Harvey got nominated. I really love that album. But that album is the definition of it works in a very specific lane, a very specific time. And if you're not into it, it's going to go over your head. A lot of it's in a very old English style of writing. It's based on a weird juxtaposition of old fairy tales, old English fairy tales, and a lot of callbacks to Elvis Presley. And there's a lot of stuff about abuse that also gets wrapped up in the storytelling of that album. It's weird. It's great in my opinion, but I also know it's not for everyone. This is Boy Genius's album to lose. I think Lana probably has a better shot at it. It would be nice to see her win. Again, The Car is not a good album. I'm just gonna stand on that pedestal here. I don't know why people got behind that Arctic Monkeys album when it's not even as good as Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino, which at least had the benefit of being a parody and kind of funny, whereas The Car is not.
Yeah. I would just wish Arctic Monkeys would go back to their old sound.
I do too. They're very much not in that space. Alex Turner is wanting to make more Baroque arrangements, like a lot of the stuff that he would scoff at in the mid 2000s. He's now making, which doesn't surprise me, but I also don't think he's quite good enough to pull it off. The big conversation I had with the Car is like we have Father John Misty at home.
Yeah. Then we have the alternative and mainstream rock spot. Had the same year and number one with Linkin Park. Lost, claiming up that spot. What can rock do to regain any relevancy?
Here's the thing. Lost is a good song. It's a good Linkin Park song. I'm not surprised that it's there, but it is very revealing of the stasis rock is in. That is what got pushed to the number one. I do think that there needs to be a desire to push in some of the new crowd. There's a lot of great rock acts that, again, are not getting chart presence. Now, granted, I don't think rock had a great year in 2023. I think it was so at best. And the stuff that was great, I think metal had a great year this year, but you had to go looking for that. And a lot of the metal that I thought was great this year is not going to cross over at all. So it's just it's frustrating because it's the sort of thing where I'd love to see rock do better. I wish there was more people allowed in the rock conversation. I wish people would say a lot of what was on Olivia Rodrigo's last album was rock. Probably deserved to get crossover there and get at least more people invested, more young people invested in the format. So we'll see.
Yeah. And then I have some albums here.
Okay.
Here we go. And then you can get me your suggestions as well.
Gotcha.
Sleep Token, Take Me Back to Eden.
Okay. Look, I get the hype behind Sleep Token. I understand. Apparently, they're great live, which I think will translate for them a lot longer term. I get the mystery behind the band. I get the pileup of sounds. I've got friends of mine who are super into Sleep Token. I get the appeal. Their frontman sounds like the frontman of Bastille.
Yeah.
He does. And I'm sorry, but it is some of the most gentrified hip-hop and R&B textures he's pulling upon from eras that are a decade old. Now, granted, those are not bad textures, but it sounds incredibly awkward when you're marrying it to all these chugging riffs. And a lot of the writing is not very good. Like, it's trying to sell a much grander experience than what's actually there. And the pretension that's wrapped around it again, I think the appropriate word is pretentious. It's trying to imply way more depth than there actually is. And that's fine. Like, I'm a pretentious guy myself. I can appreciate that. But at the same time, it also feels like the music's not good enough to support it. And I think the production on that last Sleep Token album was really hit and miss.
Zach Bryan.
Not his best work. My general opinion with Zach Bryan is that his EPs are better than his albums. Because his EP last year, Summertime Blues, was great. And I'd say it's better than American Heartbreak, mostly because American Heartbreak is 34 songs and 2 hours long. And because Zach Bryan desperately needs someone to give him some quality control, or at least help shrink and streamline his process. I think that's true this year as well, because we have Boys of Faith this year, which was so good. It was his EP that came off of the self-titled. I think that some of the best songs on the self-titled are great. I Remember Everything, East Side of Sorrow. Those are great songs, but also on that EP, it's 5 songs. It's all killer, no filler. It's great.
Slowdive, Everything Is Alive.
A little underrated in my opinion. I think this is one of those albums. It was the comeback for Slowdive that I think it showed them trying to experiment more, and I really appreciated that. Kisses is one of the best dream pop songs you're going to hear this year. I like them embracing more of their poppier side and not just wallowing in these very spare shoegazy electronics. It's a vibe album. I appreciate that, but again, I think it's better than I think some people will give it credit.
Spanish Love Songs, No Joy.
One of the best albums of the year. It's granted, it's me saying this about a Spanish Love Songs album. Shocker. So again, I love the pivot they did into Americana. I think that the indie rock side of them is really well done. The comparison I made at the time was that it very much reminded me of when the Wonder Years did that similar pivot with Sister Cities and back in 2018. It's very similar textures too. It's very washed out, very, very dark as an album. It also kind of reminds me a little bit of that La Dispute album from 2019, where a lot of thematically it's about trying to help somebody that ultimately has to help themselves. And it's that added element of distance can make it all the more difficult and heartbreaking. But again, No Joy is such a great album. I can only just keep on praising it.
Killer Mike, Michael.
This album's getting it. Okay. The Killer Mike conversation is complicated. I think a lot of people were expecting him to carry over more of the revolutionary politics that were on Run the Jewels albums. That is, if you pay attention to Run the Jewels albums and realize the politics are not quite as revolutionary as they're made out to be. Michael is not as bad as some people made it out to be, but it's not as good as it should be. It's not as good as Rap Music from back in 2012. I appreciate that it's a good solo album. I appreciate it's got that Southern swagger to it. I think a lot of the collaborations are really solid. I don't think it's as deep as it should be. I think some of the flexes come off a little sour to me. But again, I know for its target audience, it's going to work.
Genesis Owusu, The Struggler.
This album is getting a bit of a weird reception. It's a much more narrow and focused album than Smiling with No Teeth. That's not a bad thing. I think the album is way more focused. I think the themes are just as hard-hitting. It's a very literate album. If you pay attention to the details and the references to Kafka, it's very high concept. It's a very layered. I think sonically, it's a bit of a step back. I think it's a narrowing of his focus, which I don't love. At the same time, it's still a really good album. I can't hate it.
Baroness Stone.
This one broke my heart a little. I really wanted to love this. I genuinely did. I'm probably not going to review it this year because the production is better. I am so happy the production is better because that was my big issue on Golden Gray, I believe, 2019 album.
Yeah, Golden Gray.
Yeah, and the production's better, but the songs aren't there. Like, the hooks aren't there. There's nothing that pops in the same way that you got from the best stuff from Red or Blue or Purple. And that just makes me really sad. I really wanted Stone to be that culminating metal album, and it just fell so short for me.
Blur, The Ballad of Darren.
I didn't hear this album. Well, which one are we at here?
Blur.
Oh, Blur, The Battle of Blur. I don't check out for new Blur albums because Damon Albarn has long ago lapsed into being very boring. So I didn't even check this one out.
Did you check out the Gorillaz album?
I did, and I didn't like it that much. I thought Cracker Island was wildly overrated by its fans, and I think it did not feel special to me. It did not feel deep to me. None of it stuck for me. Like, I get its position in the lore, but at this point, I'm not interested enough in Gorillaz lore to to really pay it off, especially when I don't think the lyrics are that good.
Depeche Mode, Memento Mori.
I heard it briefly. I didn't cover it at this point. Again, Depeche Mode are kind of in a bit of a safer space. It's probably one of their better albums in some time, but again, for me, it just I wasn't returning to it.
Caroline Polachek, Desire, I Want to Turn Into You.
Phenomenal album. It's a great project. I love it. This is the sort of pop music that should have been huge in 2023. And again, there's no excuse for this. Like, I know that Caroline Polachek is not a huge name, but this was her approach for a mainstream crossover and breakthrough. There are so many songs that go so hard on that album, and they would have worked on pop radio. And I don't know where did the push go? It should have happened. Why has she not gone viral on TikTok at least 5 times already? Because again, the music is so good. It is gorgeous. It's summery. I heard it for the first time on vacation in Barbados, and it just went so hard.
Blink 182, One More Time.
Okay. I've said this before. I don't have the nostalgic connection for Blink that a lot of people do. And that means that I'm kind of whatever on it. I heard it. I think it's for the fans. That is the best way to put it. If you're not a fan, if you're not invested in Blink's story, I don't know how much good it'll do you, especially given that a lot of these guys are trying to behave like they are the old kids back in Blink again, and it feels tired to me. Like it doesn't connect the way it should.
Jason Isbell and the 400 Unit, Weather Vans.
Best album of the year. Yeah, I don't need to add much to that. Jason Isbell finally produces his own album. He's back as a producer, and it's his best production that he's had since he's been working with Dave Cobb. And the writing's phenomenal. The performances are phenomenal. It is such a layered and immense album. It is the sort of project that, again, for me, is album of the year. I don't see what beats it. If you're a fan of classic country, alternative country, even alternative rock, I'd say there's a lot of inroads to it because there's so much Neil Young influence on that album as well. So I think that album is so easy to sell to people, and it works. It just goes so hard.
Fall Out Boy, So Much for Stardust.
Heartbreaking disappointment. I really wanted to love that album, especially as they described that it was the follow-through, what they would have made instead of Save Rock and Roll if they had put out Folie à Deux. And yeah, sounds like it. But it's not as interesting. It is the sort of project that feels like they are now firmly in their legacy period. We are just chasing what we know to serve the fans what would work. And I said this when I talked about Fall Out Boy at length this year in a video essay. It's kind of heartbreaking because they don't, like, Fall Out Boy used to be innovative. Fall Out Boy used to take big chances, make big mistakes, and they didn't with this. And I don't think the production actually is pretty good, but I don't think the songs punch. And there's this sourness across the entire project that's defeatism that I really did not like.
Nothing But Thieves, Dead Club City.
Didn't listen to it because I can't stand Nothing But Thieves.
Oh, well. Royal Blood, Back to the Water Below.
Again, I have not really had an interest in checking out a Royal Blood album in a long time because I kind of got their formula off the first one, and then the second one wasn't very good, so I didn't hear it.
Code Orange, Above.
Okay, this is going to sting a little. I really wanted to love this album. I did. Like, I like Code Orange. I think they're a promising band. I love Forever. I thought their 2020 album was just badly produced. I appreciate they got back in with they themselves produced a lot of the new album, and it's not working. I don't know what it is that I feel like there's something missing that is not clicking with the new album, and it drove me nuts.
Chris Stapleton, Higher.
Okay. This album entirely depends on what your expectations for Chris Stapleton are. I think if you were expecting him to make a very soft-focused, mid-tempo Southern rock album full of love songs, you got that. It's great for it. White Horse is one of the best hit songs of the year. At the same time, if you expected anything more, you're not going to get it. I feel like it's a very single-minded album, and I probably overrated it as a result because, again, it's the sort of project where it's single-minded. It's very focused. It knows exactly what it wants to be and nothing else, which is both good and bad.
Avenged Sevenfold, Life is But a Dream.
For all of everyone's sake, let's pass over that one.
For everyone's sake. Yep, that was a disaster. Let's just say that.
It was a disaster. Like, I appreciated them trying something new. Like, again, it's the sort of thing I can't get super angry at because, again, it was trying something. It didn't work, but it was trying.
Dinner Party, Enigmatic Society.
Didn't hear this one. Is it good?
Yeah, it is. It's Robert Glasper, Terrence Martin. It's pretty good. I really enjoyed this time. I enjoyed my time with this.
I normally like Robert Glasper projects. It was one of those ones where I just don't think I've had time to hear it.
Yeah. And then 100 gecs, 10,000 gecs.
Okay, I'll say this. I think it's better written than a lot of people will give it credit. I think there's a lot more depth to that album than a lot of people are going to see beyond the Doritos and Cheetos and memes everywhere. I think there's more depth to that project that I think is getting overlooked. That being said, I think it is a sidestep compared to 1,000 gecs in that I feel like the hooks are not quite as good. It also embraces a very Californicated vibe, which is, you got to be in the mood for it.
Yeah. Any other albums you like this year?
Yes, actually, plenty of them. Here's one that should be on your radar because it's more on the metal side of things. This is from Svalbard. It's called The Weight of the Mask. It is black metal infused with screamo, but they signed a Nuclear Blast as of recently, so it's they did a lot of work to punch up the hooks, and they punched up a lot of the melodies. It is a gorgeous album, and it's also the emotional core of that project is incredibly strong. Highly recommend that. Next on the list is Kesha's Gag Order. That album is an experimental pop album, and it is probably one of the most... if you're a fan of Kesha at all, you get where it's coming from. If you're not, it's the side of Kesha that I think that a lot of people are like, oh, this is what she was really going through, like behind the scenes. It's very much a look behind the curtain. It's also produced by Rick Rubin, so it's probably some of her best production that she's had in a while. And it's very layered. It's very experimental. It's very psychedelic. The best comparison I have to it is Strange Mercy by St. Vincent and 808s and Heartbreak by Kanye West before he lost his mind.
Nice. So plugs out of the way. Get your plugs out of the way.
Sure. If you guys want to see more of my content, and again, I didn't spoil everything that's going to be in my upcoming videos. So if you want to see more, please check out Spectrum Pulse, which is my main channel where I talk about movies, music, art, and culture. I've got a lot of album reviews. I'm in the headlong rush before the end of the year, before I got my year-end list, where I talk about the worst hits, the best songs, and the best albums. Then from there, I also have my side channel, Billboard Breakdown, the inanities and sanities of the Hot 100. If you want to understand where things are and how they got to be there, that's where you can check that out. I will also say that if you're interested in more long-form content on my channel, I've also started doing some of the video essays this year. So the big ones for me this year, one of them was focused on Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. One of them was focused on Fall Out Boy. One of them was focused on Justin Timberlake, who seems to be trying to mount his own little comeback this year. I've seen you there. And the last one was on Bro Country and that whole movement and what it actually speaks to radio, how it impacts how a lot of music was distributed in that time. It gets political in moments, but I also think not in a way that's obtrusive.
All right. So thank you, Mark, for checking me out today.
Yeah, I'm happy to join you. We've done this. How many years have we done this?
Four.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah, it's almost getting to the 5th year, and hopefully we do it again next year.
I'd be down for it. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.